What's the worst bonus a job has ever given you? I worked at a big auction house for people with lots of money, doing manual labor. For Christmas, we got a coupon for a cup of coffee from the coffee shop in the building. We had free coffee. I still have the coupon. It's a nice reminder of what I walked away from story 2, ice cream sandwiches. We didn't get raises because it was a tough year and your department didn't increase revenue. We were R&D. Our competitors brought an ice cream truck and parked it next door and were giving out free ice cream and applications, and you could talk to their HR. They were specifically targeting our R&D team. Most of my coworkers went because it was a fancy ice cream truck they had seen but never bought from because it was expensive. My director freaked out and told his EA to go get ice cream and told people not to go. She came back with value brand ice cream sandwiches and only like 6 boxes. There were 120 engineers in our department. I only remember the managers going over and getting them. About 2/3 of my team left within the next 6 months. I did it for exactly as long as it took to vest and dipped. Best decision I ever made. They don't need you. Go forth and be happy, or at least get paid what you deserve. Story 3. Laid off the crew on Christmas Eve. I was the foreman, so he called me first. Asked me to call the rest of the guys and let them know. I said, "You do it. I don't work for you anymore." Story 4. The biggest piece of cake. Worked at a company for 9 years and through some of its toughest times. I often worked unpaid overtime and went above and beyond. These were some of the highlights the boss pointed out while giving a recognition speech about me. He ended it with, "Most families save the biggest piece of chicken for the breadwinner. So, keeping with that tradition, I'm offering you the biggest and first slice of cake." After being recognized in such a manner, I waited for about a month for an actual monetary bonus. Upon receiving nothing, I put in my notice, citing the speech and lack of actual reward for my efforts. A lot of you are inquiring. Yes, I had a one-on-one shortly after cake time with the boss asking about a monetary bonus and was reminded that the cake was my bonus. I followed up 2 weeks later to the same response before being told to drop it. When I gave my resignation, he said it was shocked and in disbelief. Shortly after, I was offered 3 additional hours on my next paycheck to stay. Story 5. We had 11 workers quit on the spot because they wanted to have a meeting with the COO about their wages and schedules, but he shut them down. Office was scrambling to replace them. It was chaos. Later that week, they ordered pizza for everyone to show their appreciation for their workers. Pizza doesn't pay my bills. Story 6. I worked in sales for a major wood products manufacturer. I sold record-breaking volume to the tune of 51 million for my territory. Second place sold 12 million. I received $100 bonus. The guy in second place received a Rolex. The CEO made a joke about it at the sales conference. Sometimes it's best to come in second place. I walked out, typed my 2-week notice, and started my own company as a direct competitor of my former employer. I'm still in business. They are not Story 7, a Christmas card with signatures of the management team. It was Walmart. Why the hell do they think the associates would want a picture of the management team? We didn't even want to see the managers when we were working. Story 8. I worked for a small sales-based company. They were pushing hard for the first $1 million month and kept saying they would make it worth our while. We assumed a big bonus, a trip, a fancy steakhouse, something. When we finally hit it, we each got a bobblehead of one of the executives. We decided to trade them. The CEO was worth less than the CFO, and HR was worth the least. It became a big running joke until HR sends an email out saying we have to stop. Story 9. My old retail job gave us all turkey vouchers for Thanksgiving. When we went to redeem them, turned out they were actually $5 off if you bought a turkey worth $25 or more. Story 10. I released a product that I thought of, worked with multiple engineers to develop, sourced internationally, sold $87 in the first quarter at 68% profit margins, and I was quite literally asked, "What's next?" Not a single thank you, no bonus, nothing. I single-handedly saved the company from a margin crisis that would have tanked our stock-costing shareholders and the executives countless millions of dollars. All I got was a "what's next?" Waited 4 months for my 5-year contract with them to expire and told them all in the nicest way possible to go duck themselves. They scrambled to try and keep and I explained that I wasn't appreciated in a way I thought was worthy of the money I had made for the organization and that I was going to find a company that would compensate me according to my value. I did. In the process, I went after them every chance I got and made a metric duck ton of money in the process. Greed will duck you over. Corporations still haven't figured it out. Story 11. Not me, but years ago, I worked in a call center and can win awards from doing most calls in an hour. This girl wore long skirts only. She won a ticket to wear jeans, but with her culture, she doesn't do that. She wore a jeans long skirt and tried turning it and was told it doesn't work on skirts. We tried explaining to them that she couldn't wear jeans and that the award given to her was meaningless since she couldn't use it. They basically told her that was her problem. so she rebelled by having longer phone conversations. Story 12. After 7 years of being a top 5 employee in my part of the company and no raises, I awarded myself a new company to work for. I was told there wasn't much of a budget for merit increases, but they had enough money to hire you two to play at a C-level brunch. Story 13. Not me, but a coworker. Every Christmas, a corp I used to work for had a Christmas raffle. There were 2-3 decent prizes. The rest was $5 to $10 garbage. Everyone got a ticket, and we gathered in the big conference room. And it started. I was sitting with my coworker, and finally his ticket number was called by the HR head, who tried with obvious fake sincerity to pump up each item like it was gold. He walks up and gets a duck and keychain fob that if you whistled, it would beep so you could find your car keys. He takes it, walks back to my table and says, "I'm a grown man. I've never lost my car keys in my life." Tosses the thing on the table and walks out the door. He came in the next week, cleared out his area, and walked the duck out and was never seen again. It was the final straw for him. Story 14. Not me, but my mom, who was an elementary school teacher. One year, they got keychains. The teachers put them in a big envelope and sent them back. Story 15. A certificate congratulating me on my 20-year work anniversary. Literally a piece of paper. My wife has a better story, though. The hospital she works at gave them a $50 gift card for a chain jewelry store. They then taxed her on it as income and deducted it from her paycheck. She doesn't buy or wear jewelry. The gift cost her money, and the hospital reported record profits that year due to all the layoffs. Story 16. Fired everyone in the department but me. Told me I was getting 10% bonus immediately, and then another bonus on top of that. Got an email, 25-cent raise applied. I was cleaning out my office 30 minutes later and handed in the biggest professional duck you resignation letter I've ever written. Was told I would never be paid what I expected, blah, 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 blah. I now work literally 10 hours a week and make double what I did there. They still call asking how to handle things, and I laugh every time. I always tell them maybe ask legal or look at the policy. I'm not working there anymore. Quit calling LeMayo. Story 17. At my old job before this one, I was promoted. They couldn't give me a raise because the economy, you know how it is. But they sure as hell could saddle me with twice as much work. I was there 3.5 years and never received a raise despite exemplary work. So when my coworkers were getting poached by a company we worked with, I threw my hat in the ring and was hired off my initial phone interview. When I handed them my notice, I made sure to say that my decision was based off the economy. You know how it is. Anyway, this coming September, I'll have been with this job 15 years. Get annual raises, quarterly bonuses, a yearly bonus, and company stock. Know your worth and go somewhere where they value your worth. Story 18, I wasn't directly involved. I'm in it. But we had hired about 100 data entry clerks for a big project that came in. When we completed the project, management brought in a bunch of sheet cakes to celebrate the completion of the project. While people still had blue icing cake in their mouths, the manager said, "Thank you all for the hard work and finishing ahead of schedule. But now that the contract is finished, you are all being let go." It was like that record player scratch sound went off and everyone froze to look at her. To this day, it gives me the willies to think about. I don't know the point of having a cake if you are firing everyone. Story 19. This is a problem as old as time. I realize this was about 15 years ago, but my sister's company announced that unfortunately that year, there wasn't enough for bonuses. Everyone was super pissed. One of her jobs was to stuff the paychecks into envelopes when they came in. So on the next payday after the bonus announcement, she went to stuff the paychecks and noticed that all of the managers did in fact get bonuses. And not only that, but they were bigger than the bonuses they had received last year. She had been in that job for about 3 years at that point. She was so mad. She still to this day cannot believe she did what she did, that she stuffed all the regular paychecks and went and took the bonus checks and shredded them. As everyone came to collect their paychecks, this was also a while ago, and although direct deposit was a thing, not nearly everyone had it, managers would come back asking about their bonus checks, and she really loved reminding them that they were recently notified that they weren't giving out bonus checks this year. It didn't make a difference because the bonus checks were reprinted and distributed a few days later, but everyone else in the rank and file had got to witness how pissed off and vocally angry the managers were that they didn't get their bonus checks, and then they had to watch them come back to get them a few days later. Needless to say, employee morale went straight through the floor. My sister was one of many that left the company in the following months. Story 20. Management had ducked up, and their solution was to mandate 90-plus hour weeks from everyone for several months. We were told that management will make it right. They announced that the president and CEO is coming to personally thank us and give us a generous bonus. The day comes, and sure enough, the guy rolls up in his $300K Mercedes, flaps his gob hole for a bit, then has his assistant hand out envelopes with our bonus. The generous bonus? A $25 gift card to Walmart. Story 21. The Subway my then boyfriend worked at was known for the big boss, being very, very generous during the holiday party. He bought an employee a car a few years prior. Every year, every single employee got a $100 bill, but there was raffles and goal-based bonuses too. My partner got at least $300 the prior 2 years, but he had been promoted and was looking at over $500. Bossman spent Octi deck hyping the employees that if they hit a specific goal, bonuses would be even bigger than they normally are. The employee went well above the goal and were so damn excited. At the party, the first sign things are off is suddenly it's no longer an open bar. I think the manager knew what was coming because he told my partner's whole store and at least 3 others to put their drinks on his tab. Bonuses were a coupon for a 6-in sub. Raffle prizes went from $5K worth of items to single cheap-ass dartboard. No goal bonus. Manager ended up spending $2K out of his own pocket for drinks, but Bossman had to pay nearly $10K in damages, or so he claimed, from his super drunk, super pissed employees. My partner flipped a table and threw a decorative vase. A huge amount of people quit that night over the next couple of days, so nearly $10K in damages and whatever the hit was for 2 stores being closed for a couple weeks around Christmas. Don't duck with your mini-midge wage employees' income. Story 22. 94% of my company went remote during COVID. I was part of the 6% deemed essential, who thus still had to report to work in person. We still had to pay for our parking passes despite the fact the campus was closed and nobody else could access the property. For 2 years, we still had to get up, put on our uniforms, and report to work, and we had to pay for parking to do it, while 94% of the company got to sit at home in their PJs and not pay for parking. To reward us for being essential, we received a gift card good for 5 free hot or cold beverages in the cafeteria, which was closed due to the pandemic. The coupon expired right before they reopened after the pandemic ended. When business resumed, we got to listen to the 94 complaining about how hard it was to have to come back to work and how they should get a discount on parking passes as they weren't used to having to pay for them like before. We got to listen to people complain about how adjusting to waking up before 10 a.m. was tough on their mental health. We got to listen to people catching back up again, like they all got back from vacation. These people all make more than any of the 6% of us, by the way. Story 23 wasn't an item or raise, but basically, more days at work. I was around 20, and my restaurant had praised me and my work ethic and wanted to make sure I was getting more money, so they gave me more hours. I thought this would be good, so eventually I'm often working over 9 days in a row, most of them doubles and certainly holidays. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I'm there early to open, and I'm there late for closing. Whenever I had a day off, they called me needing help, and so I'd respond and work whatever shift they needed. Sometimes they'd just call me in and later on tell me I'm a double can. I'd be an opener. Yep, can I close? Yep, another double? Sure. Go solo on the holiday? Yes, sir. Can I give you more hours? You know I got you. I thought this was a reward initially. The praise felt great and I was making more money, often well over $100 a night. As a host, we had a tip share, not direct tips, and I was loyal to the place. It ducking killed me, man. They definitely treated it like a grand thing that was a reward for my effort. More hours, it'll more money. Congrats on your bonus. I just didn't understand that I was getting used. I thought it was an award for trying hard. Story 24, a $50 Amazon gift certificate. How could I feel bad about what was basically cash? I was part of a 4-person team that booked a $26 million software contract for my company. I wrote half of the proposal as software tech lead, and I cleaned up all of the text in the rest of the proposal. The other 3 were 1 level above me in the hierarchy, and one of them bought a Lexus with his bonus. Story 25. I worked throughout the pandemic, coming into contact with people from all over the globe. I'm not allowed to say specifically what my job was, but it was in the public sector after the pandemic ended. We were each given a sachet of porridge as a bonus. Lucky us. Story 26. Not me, but a guy in worked with me was central to a major technology implementation. At the end, they gave him a $5 gift certificate for Baskin-Robbins. His exact quote to me was, "It would have been better if they gave me nothing, because now they told me my worth." He was still rightfully salty about it years later. Story 27. We had a lottery of sorts, that in order to be entered, you had to be one of a few things. 1. Have the highest numbers either on the floor or the forklifts. Warehouse work, duh. I was middle of the pack at best. 2. Highest growth again, middle of the pack. 3. Not call out sick at all that month. 3 to 5 people were picked at random for this one. I hated it there. I took at least 1 sick day per month, so that was not an option. I was never going to be in the running for any of these, so I didn't give a crap. On top of that, even if I did win one, the reward was a $50 gift card to a series of stores, none of which I shopped at. I did the maths. I could have worked for an extra 6 minutes a day and come away with the same reward. and I wouldn't have to work my ass off to do so. Story 28. Around 12 to 15 years ago, I worked at McDonald's. I knew how to work all areas of the restaurant, was responsible for unloading the truck and doing inventory, and had several certifications to be able to fix things, like the ice cream machine. I approached management and told them that I deserved to be making a lot more than minimum wage. $7 an hour, because I was more valuable to them than the other employees with less responsibility. In response, I went from making minimum wage to minimum wage plus 15 CERs. The cherry on top of all this was that the following week, the state minimum wage increased to $7.25, and they refused to add the 15s that I was given on top of that. Meanwhile, our owner pulled up in a brand new $300K car and said it was pocket change for him to buy it. Thankfully, I had a great paying internship that following summer and saved all of the money I made so that I didn't have to work at all my last year of college. They called me several times asking me to come back, or at least do part-time, as they needed my knowledge experience and would pay me $1 more, to which I told them to eat my ass. Story 29. A poinsettia after Christmas was over. They used them to decorate the restaurant, and then the bonus was they handed them out to employees instead of properly caring or disposing of them. Story 30. Okay, so here's the problem with mine. The bonus wasn't actually given to me. My work would do drawings for a car as a bonus for good service. Every year we managed to get this bonus opportunity. Well, they would always do the drawing extremely early in the morning. So they had the rule that regardless of if the person was there, they would still get the car, all except 1 year. My 1 year, my name was drawn for the car. And management, because they didn't like me and I wasn't there, decided I wasn't getting it, and they were going to redraw. Now, if they had changed the rule, okay. But here's the thing, the next year, they did the drawing, and guess what? The person wasn't there and still got the car. To say I was mad was an understatement. The only reason I knew about it was because a couple of my coworkers said something to me. Story 31. They mailed us a package to show us how much they appreciated us. It included a pen that never worked, a speaker that requires an aux cable, and a branded hat from a sponsor. The next day, they announced everyone is being let go. Story 32. Last year, I worked in an aged care where we did 3 COVID lockdowns, and everyone was just exhausted by Christmas. And so we were all looking forward to our Christmas party that was planned, and then they decided to cancel it due to COVID, and then never reorganized a Christmas dinner or even gave us anything special for Christmas after. We got absolutely nothing. I then worked Christmas night, where usually a workplace would leave food and drinks in the staff room as a thank you for working Christmas, but once again, we got nothing. I quit soon after because it became clear they didn't care about their staff at all and only cared about money. Story 33. My 5-year service award was a cheap plastic travel mug with the org logo on it. It's the same one we give out for free at events. They put it in a paper bag and filled it up with fancy colored paper. The bag was worth more than the mug. There was a clear plastic garbage bin outside the venue where we had the event. I tossed it in that as I left. Everyone leaving the venue would have seen it, including the management. Story 34. Company I worked for called in department staff to help with overnight inventory count. We usually paid a company to do our cycle counts and audits. But the company I worked for was heading towards going out of business, and they decided to end their third-party contract to save money and just have us do it. 8 p.m. to 7 a.m., and most of us had to work a full shift, day of, starting at 9 a.m. We got it all finished, and then worked a busy day, understaffed BC. A few people called in out of protest, while my boss said to keep up the pace and that he had a special gift for all our hard work. 6 p.m. finally comes around, and we are all tired and beat, let alone having been up for nearly 24 hours straight by that point. And we head for the door. Our boss meets us at the exit and smugly hands us all a free soda. Story 35. I worked for an evil empire healthcare that grossly underpays and overworks their employees, but it's one of the few major hospitals in my area. So a lot of people have to work for them, even though they don't like it. One time they pulled me back to say that they realized they were underpaying me compared to my coworkers with the same years of experience, but they didn't want me to tell anyone because not all of my coworkers were going to get this bonus. It was a nickel. My bonus was 5 cents. I told everyone because it was such a joke. It would have been so much better if it just showed up on my pay and they didn't tell me I was going to get this big bonus. Story 36. At my old school district, we were one-to-one aides in self-contained classrooms. The district itself was well known as having an amazing spec ed program, and we had students from multiple countries whose parents moved there specifically for the program. It had plenty of funding, though we were not part of the union, being paid about 30% less than surrounding districts. No insurance. A typical day in my life was dealing with cleaning crap off of teenagers who were poorly potty trained, chasing after elopers, and unfortunately restraining physically violent students. One year we were all brought into a special ed meeting after school, and we were all given a heart-shaped chocolate because we were the heart of the school. And not even like a full-on giant Valentine's Day heart of chocolate, but like one of those little Valentine's Day candies You get in a pack of 100 for $5. Story 37. What's the worst bonus a job has ever given you? I worked at a smallish company that implemented a program where each employee got $1 a month to send to other employees for a job well done. You could send someone the whole dollar or send 10 people 10 cents each, however you wanted to split it up, etc. This was laughable in itself, but then we found out that when you cashed out your rewards, it was also taxed, so you were really only handing out 70 cents. I had never seen such a cheap, embarrassingly stupid thing at work before. One of the other perks at this company was a free Dave Ramsey finance course. Story 38. I worked at a place where they sent congrats you got a bonus emails, and when you clicked on the link, which is from the company's domain, it said you fell for a phishing test and now must take the phishing course. Worst part, I was on a 15-person offensive security team, and several of my teammates got pissed enough that they started phishing HR and upper management with live malware. One of them ransomed a VP's computer with a half-joking message that he would only decrypt the data if he got his fake bonus. Another hacked the HR system and messed with the database permissions, such that nobody could complete phishing training. Eventually, the company had to apologize. We had terrible bonuses for years because of tough time, and the fact that corporate was willing to hire a pretty shady, overpriced cybersecurity firm to send us fake bonus emails really pissed a bunch of people off. Story 39. A BBQ lunch. There was food every Friday that was delivered towards the end of the day so that it covered both first and second shift. I was on second. We had been absolutely slammed with a huge project, and it fell disproportionately to nights for various reasons. To thank everyone for all of their hard work, the management hired a BBQ company to come in and cater lunch, which happened when we were not there. Due to the lunch, they canceled that week's Friday food. So, to thank us for all of our hard work, they took away our food. Story 40. I used to work assembling wine cabinets, and it was just me in that department. Keep in mind that I was also doing deliveries because pretty much everyone in the warehouse weren't citizens. And whenever there was deliveries down towards San Diego, nobody could go, and as I was the only citizen, I was chosen. Actually, it was more like I got asked if I could. I didn't mind it because it got me out of the warehouse for the day. So a few people from other departments were getting a raise. I was hearing some were getting a $5 or $10 raise. So I went, showcased my work, and proceeded to ask them for a raise as well. Their response was that there wasn't a lot of money in the company and that they could only give me $1. So I decided to give them my own $1 and quit on the spot. I grabbed my tools and left. Story 41. I created 2.1 M in sales for a new business their first year. I was on salary, no monthly or quarterly bonuses. So I was really expecting a big Christmas bonus. The CEO called me into his office, gave this long speech about how well the company was doing due to my hard work, yada, yada, yada. The last thing he said before he handed me an envelope was, "Don't tell anyone about the amount of this Christmas bonus. I didn't do anything like this for anyone else." I shook his hand and thanked him and walked back to my office. The bonus was $500. We were off for the holidays. When we came back on 2nd Jan, he was driving a new 80K pickup. 4 weeks later, I turned in my notice. I went to work for one of my accounts for twice the salary and a strong bonus schedule. It was a great move for sure. Story 42. At a job I used to have, they told us during onboarding that if you were on time every day for a month, you would get a bonus at the end of the month. After I was there for like 6 months and never once saw the bonus in my paycheck, I asked my coworkers about it. They said, "Are you checking the list?" I had no idea what that was. Apparently, they would put the names of everyone who had been on time every day on a list on the door of the HR office, down the end of a hall that I never went down, and it was up to you to go get your check. If you didn't get it by the end of the month, you forfeited it and the money went back to the company. I was apparently giving my bonuses back to the company. Story 43. I work for a healthcare giant. Record-breaking profits. My raise was 18 cents this year. They already don't pay us enough. That's just insulting. I'd rather have an extra PTO day. Yes, I should leave, but I work from home and the job lets me flex my work hours. When you have a child that's so important to have, sticking it out a few more years. Story 44. I am a nurse. In 2021, the year after, but still kinda during COVID, for the holidays, my job at Nuvance Health gave us a voucher to the cafeteria, not to exceed $7, which is half a meal. After what I had been through, it stung more than nothing. Years prior, at a different hospital, I'd gotten a really nice holiday party and some gift cards from the surgeon. It wasn't about TUI, it was about the gesture. We bend over backwards for them to stay on schedule, make sure they have what they need, keeping the patients. It made me feel icky. I left that job, thank God. At least now I get nothing instead of a half-assed gesture. Story 45. They took me out of the role I applied for and was enjoying, put me in another role that required around-the-clock service to clients and said, "There's no pay bump, but this will help you take on more work." I took vacation for a week, came back, and put in my 2 weeks during training. Story 46. I've gotten a $25 gift card for a local grocery store for Thanksgiving. 40 years ago, they used to bring in a truck full of frozen turkeys, and the same for Christmas. My worst raise was 0.25%. Almost told them to keep it. Almost forgot the thank you we received from our GM one time. He brought in a box of sausage McMuffins. Not sausage egg McMuffins, just sausage and cheese. And this was probably 15 years ago, so we weren't having an egg crisis like we have now. I also know that he was friends with the franchise owner, so if $120 of $1 sausage McMuffins wasn't insulting enough, I'm sure he got a discount on top of that. Story 47. Same place all 3 times. A disposable stethoscope that probably cost $1 if bought in bulk, $200 in an envelope. Then it got better S&D. We got a $100 gift card to Sam's Club. It was even better if your spouse. It worked there too, BC, you both got one. Then next couple of years, took that away and gave us a small frozen turkey. A bunch of employees got together, all took hundreds of those turkeys and threw them on the admin. Slawn, very fancy house and lawn. Next year, still turkeys, but we were told if we didn't want them, to please tell so they could donate to the food bank instead of, Story 48. Tickets to the local university football game. We worked at a college bookstore. Nearly all of us, except management and the full-time lead cashier, were students of the university. We could already get in free with our student IDs. The student section was a lot better than these nosebleed end zone seats he was handling out. Exceeded sales goals by almost 10%, and his special reward to us was something we all already got for free. Story 49. I had a crappy retail job in college. They gave me a $50 bonus for Christmas one year. Not too bad for minimum wage. Then my manager turned around and immediately asked me to give $20, along with everyone else, to buy the a-hole owner a big bottle of his favorite whiskey. I'm still so ducking pissed at myself that I just meekly handed it over. She turned out to be a massive thief, stealing thousands of dollars from this place right under the owner's nose to fund her tattoo and Hummer. And God knows what else hobbies. Owner probably never even got that whiskey. She just took my $20. I'll never get over it. Story 50. My work has these points which we can award each other for going above and beyond and be redeemed for gifts. I spent 2 years racking up 1,000 points and was the first in my company to reach 1,000 points. I redeemed all 1,000 points thinking I'd get a really great prize, and it was a small crocheted cupcake, about 5 centimeters in size. 2 years of hard work and recognition for a $10 crocheted cupcake. I immediately threw it in the trash as it made me irrationally angry to look at. Story 51. A Dunkin' gift card. That hadn't been set up. $0. Our boss had talked up bonuses. It was highly reminiscent of Michael Scott's big surprise. Clearly, she'd run by the grocery store on the way in and I think just shoplifted the cards. None of them had anything. For months after that, we'd be headed out for a smoke and coffee break, which had become long and often since the gift card kerfuffle, and ask her if she wanted anything from Dunkin'. She'd just look mad and say, no thanks. Story 52. In nursing school, I was a nurse aide in the hospital. An old man with a stroke who couldn't move hadn't had a shave in days. I shaved his face. His wife was so happy she gave me a $20 tip. I refused several times before she put it in my pocket and left. So I turned it in to the hospital nursing supervisor because I was concerned about the ethics. Next weekend, I got a thank you card from the hospital for providing great care and a $10 coffee shop gift card. They closed the following Monday and they pocketed my $20 and gave me a $10 gift card to a closed coffee shop. Story 53. My first job in it. I was the solo guy for a whole bunch of different offices. I ran around like an idiot all the time, trying to get everything done. When raise and bonus time came around, I got a letter thanking me for all my work and congratulating me on my 0% raise and 0% bonus. I went and talked to the HR lady who sent it out. I know she just did a mail merge, but that's one quick way of pissing off a bunch of people. Story 54. A propeller beanie. We had just delivered a huge software project on time and on budget. There was a big party in the cafeteria for all the software developers. The VP, who was your typical MBA type, stood up, called for everybody's attention, and said he had a special gift for all of us. Then he went on to say that, to him, we were all just a bunch of propeller heads. At which point, his assistants walked in with boxes of propeller beanies and handed one out to everybody. And that was our special gift. Story 55. Everyone I was working with for a year and a half got profit sharing of $2,500. I got $200. When I questioned my manager, I was told that I was technically a part-time worker for a week in January, although I was working full-time hours. So I was entitled to the part-time profit sharing because I hadn't been full-time for the entire calendar year. I was quite upset. The next day, the manager handed me an envelope and told me not to tell anyone. I opened the envelope in my car, and it was a coupon for $20 for a meat shop. Story 56. Work for a super small construction company. 15 people, total small. Won a 1.5 mid-year contract single-handedly, largest single contract in the company's 35-year history. Didn't get crap. Bosses both went on 3 vacations that year to various luxury locations around the globe. Didn't get crap. Story 57. Telling me my job is at risk of redundancy. Bizarrely, when apparently last year was the most profitable year ever. Duckers. Hope their next crap's a pineapple. Story 58. A ring. After so many years of accident-free, they give you a ring, and every year after they install a diamond chip. I don't even wear work-branded clothes, much less jewelry branded with my work logo. I wish these companies would just start adding the cost of all the crap they think employees would want to the frickin' paychecks. In my 10 years here, I have yet to see anyone wear that damn ring. Story 59. Large multinational corporation Christmas gift. A rep came around and gave everyone in the company a thin black wine bag, and we all said, "Do we get to choose the wine?" Nope. The gift was the bag itself. Story 60. Way back in the 90s, the company that I was working for hit $1 million in revenue. They gave us all a gift to celebrate. I got a Post-it note dispenser that said, $1 Million Club. I think I was making $7.65 an hour. Story 61. An old employer used to give out turkeys for Thanksgiving. Then realized it was a lot of work to have someone go out and get turkeys. So they gave us cash instead. Estimated the value of a turkey to be $10. So for Thanksgiving, we would get a $10 bonus. That would be taxed at a crazy rate. So we got enough for a Snickers and a bottle of water at the company cafeteria. Story 62. I worked for a company that pissed off a minor celebrity. This celebrity then convinced his followers to call and carry us out. I received over 1,000 phone calls the first 2 days of people calling me, telling me I should die, wishing harm to my family, etc. My company, as a way to say thank you, gave all us representatives an extra 15-minute break to use whenever we wished. Story 63. Killed myself outside all winter for this a whole, all the way down to 36F at one point. Spring rolls around, he showed up to work on his shiny new Harley he bought with his bonus. I got Wendy's a couple of times while being subjected to his rants about how much my coworkers sucked. Joke was on him. When he got my notice a few months later, he sobbed like a little girl. Story 64. Last year at my company's Christmas party, we gave everyone these old expired McDonald's coupons that my assistant had found when cleaning her parents' place. Some pretty surprised faces popped up when they opened them. Good times, good laughs, and a couple of good "what the ducks," followed by the proper envelopes directly after. Haha. I'm not sure why companies treat their employees like crap. I make the most money, and so do my employees when they are happy and taken care of. Story 65. A $50 gift certificate to Hermes, the upscale fashion chain. The cheapest thing in their catalog was a $70 keychain. So it was literally a gift of the privilege of paying $25 for a keychain I didn't want. Story 66. When hired, I was told a Christmas bonus of 2% to 7% of my salary was common, which meant $1,600 to $5,600. 2 years in a row, I and everyone else got $100. The first year it was a $100 bill, and the second year it was a check for $93 because they weren't even classy enough to gross it up, so the check amount was $100. Story 67. In the UK, the company I worked for, Mobile Phone Network, announced their yearly profit as some figure in the high millions. All the staff got a cookie. Not a particularly nice cookie at that. Also, one year we were giving SIM card readers to store phone numbers on. Pretty useless, as they caused people's phones to crash and lock up, and the business ended up having to replace a few hundred members of staff's phones. Story 68. The company had mugs with the company logo printed on them for marketing giveaways at trade fairs or similar. Some of these mugs had been standing in the sunlight for too long, and the print was starting to fade. The whole team got one of these mugs, a pencil with the company name on it and a crafty notepad, as a bonus for Christmas. But only if you had been with the company for at least 6 months. The newbies didn't get anything. Story 69. A card. The company usually gave Christmas bonuses and gifts, but at my branch, we had a Jehovah's Witness who kicked up a stink about receiving a Christmas gift and couldn't just accept it because she doesn't celebrate Christmas, so they opted out of giving our branch anything as to not single her out. Seriously, duck you, Kayla. Call it all a bonus and just be gracious and accept it, you. Story 70. Manager came in all excited and passed out ice cream bars as our yearly bonus. A year later, we were all pulled into a boardroom and given substantial raises by a VP who had our manager sitting there apologizing that he basically had been screwing over staff to pad his own pockets to receive these massive bonuses himself. Story 71. An annual Christmas potluck, where the company very enthusiastically bragged about providing the meat. 3 kinds, and the employees were supposed to bring everything else. Everyone always said there was a long line for it, and by the time most of them got there, 15 mins or more in, it was all gone. They just have taken more than they were supposed to. We could also buy each other secret Santa gifts, which they enthusiastically pushed. Story 72. A TV in the break room. After every single one of us within the company had listed raises as the biggest thing that we wanted from management, they decided to try and placate us with a TV. Story 73. A coupon for 10% off your grocery bill. Only redeemable on purchases of $100 of groceries or more. Also, only redeemable at that chain. To be extra clear, that meant in order to redeem your $10 Christmas bonus, you needed to give your employer $100. Your Christmas bonus that year was $80. Story 74. A $100 pre-tax, and it was given to me unironically as if it were a genuine thank you for my efforts. I used it to fill my car with gas and get a sandwich. Story 75. I worked for one of the highest performing departments in one of the biggest companies in the world. My Christmas bonus one year was a packet of Swiss Miss and a candy cane. Story 76. The pie chart breakdown of what the company is actually giving me, not just salary. Was told that reflected better benefits than other counties in my area, so that was the bonus. Story 77. I had to evacuate my house because of a wildfire and lived in a hotel for a month while the smoke damage was dealt with. My boss wanted to send me a gift because of what you're going through. A candle. The gift was a candle. Story 78. I was promised a raise, and they swore up and down it was coming soon. Then one day my boss handed me an envelope, and I was like, finally it's here. I opened it, and it was a letter saying what a great employee I was, and I won Employee of the Month and a $10 Starbucks gift card. I still regret not quitting on the spot. Story 79. I once trained an entire company how to use a new piece of software, implemented all of the relevant standards and appearances, and supported them all as they transitioned to the new platform. In addition to all of my normal job duties, I received a $25 gift card to the local grocery chain as an end-of-year bonus. I let them know I was resigning less than 2 weeks later. Story 80. A previous job held a contest during the holidays to see who could generate the most 5-star Google reviews. The winner would get $2,000. Second place, $1,500. Third, $1,000. So $4,500 total being given out to 3 people, and the rest of the staff got nothing. It was a very small company, so everyone could have gotten something, but instead, rewards to the highest contributors of fraudulent reviews. Story 81. During early COVID shutdowns, think April 2020, was given a $40 Texas Roadhouse gift card. I asked for the cash equivalent because the closest one was 45 mins away, and I didn't ever go out to eat. I was called ungrateful by Har. Story 82. Not me, my husband. He worked for a chain store. They gifted them with a $50 Walmart gift card, then took them back as they realized they were not permitted to do. Another time, they gave him a bottle of this disgusting, 100 proof liquor, so I think they wanted him to die. Story 83. Our company had renewed a contract and gave bonus to the folks who had stayed on board. I received a honey-baked ham certificate when my team lead received an $8,000 bonus. Rumors ran around about who got what fast, and seems that all but 4 got ham stamps. The 4 who received actual money were not shy about weighing it around. Story 84. We all got gift cards to the restaurant we worked at. Here's the kicker. I was the GM, and the owner made me fire a server for applying the gift card value to a cash check and pocketing the money. She is vegan, and there were no vegan options on the menu. Story 85. I got a new job, and after 3 months, they gave me a Caribbean cruise for 2. It was worth about $4K 20 years ago. 7 years later, I was their best salesman. I had a large territory and worked 60 hours a week sometimes. They gave me a bonus of $1,600 that year. I was gone with a month. Story 86. Not mine. For the last few years at a Montessori school, the head teachers came to expect and count on a bonus equal to roughly a 2-week period. They held the Christmas party in January this year, normally the beginning of December, where they pass them out. $20 Starbucks card. Definitely the most scummy thing I've seen. Story 87. A couple of years ago, I got a little $25 bonus gift card for extra work I'd been doing, including lots of hours, even though I was salaried exempt, no overtime. The gift card was taxed as a bonus, and on my subsequent paycheck, I had an extra $19 taken out in tax. Story 88. Chocolate bars with the company logo on it, and then one of the owners was expressing how cool it was, and it wasn't cheap to have that mold made. Mind you, they are a multi-million-dollar company with a surplus of cash. Story 89. Nothing by at all, and wouldn't tell any of us we weren't getting our bonuses, which were advertised as a reason to accept the bare minimum salary. Higher-ups would just deflect or say, I don't know, ask. We knew they got theirs. I quit not long after that. Story 90. This wasn't a bonus, but our union argued for us to get more pay. by shortening our lunch breaks and taking away a holiday. What's worse is that union dues went up, so we actually made like $0.26 less a pay period, or something like that. Story 91. When I worked at a call center, they rewarded us for hitting above all our metrics for the quarter with a $25 gift card. Just one card that only one employee out of 100 plus could win by raffle. All it did was make us feel hatred for the winning employee, in addition to hating management. Story 92. For Employee Appreciation Week, once we were told to expect a surprise on Friday. We figured lunch. No confirmation from management, but when people asked, messages back said we'd get our surprise around midday. Management brought us all a pen. These were surplus pens. They did not even go buy pens. Story 93. Worked for a university hospital. Christmas luncheon was held for our group. Director gets up and gives 10-minute PowerPoint presentation, says, "Don't worry, nobody is getting fired," speech. Hiring freeze. No bonuses, promotions for next year. Enjoy your lunch. The lunch was leftover hospital food from the cafeteria. Story 94. Christmas dinner that all the employees cooked/paid for setup. Owners came in, gave us a big speech about how great the year was but could do better next year. Then packed up all the leftovers and took them home with them. But we got to close at 3 instead of 4. Story 95. A bronze medallion with the company logo, with a letter explaining that the company was in a rebuilding year. CEO didn't get a bonus, but still got stock options worth millions, of course. Story 96. Super gave us pizza he had bought on a previous shift. It was already crap pizza when warm. Now he gave us a pizza that isn't just crafty, but also cold. Meanwhile, there's a Casey's 2 blocks away. Go get us a warm pizza, for crying out loud. Story 97. It was when I just out college on night shift, night before Thanksgiving. A pack of gum handed by the GM with a verbal thank you. It's a Fortune 50 company BTW. Story 8. Worked for electrical tape manufacturer. Imperfect/garbage rolls were there by the ton. For Christmas, we were allowed to take home some red and green tape, defects, while clocking out. Story 99. I worked for a radio station, and they gave us a check for $104.90, the station number, because they thought it was cute. After the tax, it was like $80. Thanks. Story 100. The greatest gift you can have is knowing that you're making a difference. At an all-staff with no food other than stale pretzels and expired chips, and overripe mini oranges. Story 101. Clothes with company name on it and a lotto card no one ever won money on. One year we got candy and very cheap soup bowl that you could tell was gonna melt as soon as you put soup into it. Story 102. My boss gets $800K Christmas bonus, and my colleagues and I get a 15 gift card. To obtain the gift card, we have to agree to sell our personal data to third-party marketing. Every January, my phone is nonstop spam. Story 103. The company decided instead of a raise, they would pay us a percentage of the profits every month. My first check was 52 cents. I told them to keep it, and I quit. Story 104. We power wash among other construction jobs, and our boss gave us a rain suit with the company name on it for a Christmas bonus BTW. We are a multi-million-dollar company. Story 105. My employer, as a bonus, gave all of their employees free movie tickets for a movie chain that only had theaters located in Connecticut. I lived in California at the time. Story 106. I qualified for a big trip within my company in 2019. It was a full expense-paid cruise to beautiful islands and the works. Then COVID happened, and the trip was canceled. They sent me a blanket. Story 107. I got a super fancy knife one time. Would have been super cool had I not been in charge of the warehouse and knew the pallet of knives had been collecting dust for years. On some shelf. Story 108. The worst EMO is when MGM&T has a catered lunch gig. Then they invite us frontline folks to help yourself to leftovers. Yeah, like I'm gonna scrounge around in those cold, half-filled containers of scraps. Story 109. Worked all through COVID. Afterwards, the company hyped and hyped how thankful they were for our dedication through COVID. Teammates will be getting a thank you present. Hype, hype, hype. What did we get? An umbrella. Story 110. A ballpoint pen with the company logo printed on it was our Christmas bonus. Fortunately for everyone involved in that interaction, my pen had just ran out and I needed a new one. People who walked out of a job interview, why did you do it? Story 1. Pyramid scheme advertised as sales and marketing. It was a group interview. They served wine for duck's sake. They had obvious stooges initiating conversation about how great this opportunity was. I got very drunk and stopped being polite about it. Story 2. I wasn't informed about the evidently very strict building security prior to the interview. The front door was practically unmarked, and you had to swipe a card to get in, but there was no intercom. The elevator required a card as well, but the stairs didn't. However, no one informed me that the stairwells are locked from the outside, meaning I was locked in the stairwell with no way to get out. Called the recruiter over and over, and even called the front desk, but they just kept putting me on hold instead of sending someone to let me in at the correct floor. I ended up getting a call from the recruiter while still stuck in the stairwell telling me they would not be going forward with the interview because I was late. I almost screamed and asked her as calmly as I could manage if she had gotten any of the messages I left for her, letting her know I was presently stuck in the stairwell with no way to get out. She said she hadn't, and said it was too late anyway because they had gone with another candidate. She almost hung up before I could yell, probably too loudly. Then, "Can someone please come free me from the stairwell so I can leave?" They sent security to get me, and I was treated like a criminal as I was led from the building. I have never been so confused, humiliated, and angry in my entire life. I left them a scathing review on Glassdoor. This happened 8 years ago in Boston, Ma. USA. I honestly don't recall the name of the company or industry. I was scheduled for the interview through a temp agency and had really only been told the bare minimum. In retrospect, temp agencies are not worth it, and I wish I'd just applied for jobs directly. I was in 21 and fresh out of college and didn't want to make waves, so to those suggesting I should have called the police and/or sued them, I agree 100%, and current me would give 21-year-old me the same advice. Story 3. I once showed up for a job interview in a suit and tie after answering a newspaper ad for a warehouse worker. Instead of a job interview at the warehouse, they had me get into a freezer truck with one of the employees who drove me a few hours away, pulled over in some random neighborhood, and explained to me that the job was going door to door trying to sell cuts of meat to people, unsolicited. I told him this was not the warehouse worker job that they had advertised, and if he didn't bring me back home immediately, I was going to call the police and report a kidnapping. I was brought back to my car, but I was not paid for the several hours of my wasted time. Duck you, Pacific Prime of Cromwell, Connecticut. Story 4. It was a virtual interview and I ended it. The interviewer was a complete git, had an ego, and would make condescending remarks. Just told him that it sounds like he's not interested in working together. So in the interest of both our time, we should just end the call. I didn't realize this would get so much attention. I want to put it out there that this is something that everyone should feel comfortable doing. Don't let anyone treat you poorly and walk away calmly with your head held high, my kings and queens. Story 5. It was a commission-based sales job selling kitchen knives. The interviewer pulled out a knife and it fell apart in his hand. I am also not a salesperson. Story 6. Showed up and realized it was a pyramid scheme that involved door-to-door sales. Story 7. Showed up and the manager practically bragged about how the job offered no breaks for an 8-10 hour shift. And if there was a food break, it would be 5 mins max at a hip height table with no chairs. She said that you'd be fired if you sat down even for 30 seconds. I'm more than capable of doing that. I did that every day at my last job. But when you brag about how your employees are so overworked that they don't get breaks or an option to rest their legs, it tells me all I need to know about how little you value your employees. I should also note that this job wasn't paying exceptionally well. Above minimum wage, but not at a level that was even enough to live on. Story 8. I once went to a job interview for a large welding shop in the middle of a rainstorm. After talking to the interviewer for 30 or so minutes, he walked me out to the shop floor to take a welding test. The machine we went to was in decent condition, but was literally sitting in a puddle of water. The welding table's legs were rusty and not grounded well, and also in said puddle. Over half the shop was flooded. I turned around and said, "No, thank you," then proceeded to walk out the door. My life is worth more than $20 an hour. Story 9, slightly different. I actually interviewed and was hiring by a call center that focused on getting donations for a variety of nonprofit organizations. I was desperate. It was on a Thursday, and I was told to show up the following Monday. When I showed up Monday morning, the entire business unit was completely empty, like stripped to the floor, wires hanging from the roof, empty. When I was there the week before, I saw around 20-25 cubicles of people all working diligently. A manager's desk at the far back, and waiting area chairs with a table, all in one large room. To this day, I have no idea what happened. I just know they got out of there, quick in 3 days' time. Story 10. Applied for a teaching job. My current, at the time, job was at a school for people with disabilities. This new school was a school for children gifted in a particular field. I was headhunted when one of my students from my current school was accepted to the new school. The woman interviewing asked why I wanted to work there, so I explained the above, including student with disability. She goes with the most disgusted look on her face, "We don't have students like that here." Should point out that I'm also disabled. Was not going to work out, obviously. Story 11. A jumped-up security guard making me walk away before I even got in the building for an interview. I followed the instructions I was sent by the hiring manager, which was to park in the designated guest spaces. Security guard came charging out of the building, yelling at me when I was barely out of the car about how I couldn't park there. Then when I raised my voice just to try and get him to listen, he started yelling at me for yelling at him. Eventually, when I got to tell him that I was told to park there, he called the hiring manager and started yelling at them about how I'd been yelling at him. Partway through that phone call, I thought, nah, duck this, got back in the car and drove off. The hiring manager called me to apologize and asked if I'd come back. I politely declined, saying I wanted nothing to do with that security guard again. Story 12. It was for a management position, running a mailroom, something I'd done twice before. All the standard questions were asked. I felt like it was going well. Then, he suddenly says to me, I'm hearing a lot of I from you. I'm concerned because we are about the team and not the individual here. The hell? It's a job interview, and you're concerned that I am answering questions you have asked specifically about me, with answers that address your questions about me. That's utterly nonsensical. I don't even remember how I responded, but I knew I didn't want to deal with his stupid semantic word and mind games, which I was sure I'd only seen the surface of. So I steered us right into concluding the interview, and I left. I also made a subtle show of taking back the copies of my resume that I'd brought with me. Story 13. I'm a vet tech. Interviewed at a primary care, single doctor practice. The manager was over 25 minutes late to my interview. While I waited for her, the front desk staff ignored me while they talked crap about the tech's manager and clients. The manager said they did not believe in referring to any specialists because Dr. A is a specialist in everything from grizzly bears to canaries. He was not. He hadn't even done a rotating internship and definitely had not done any type of residency program. I had already worked in a toxic clinic, but at least the doctors were competent. When she asked if I had any questions, I just asked if I could have my resume back so I didn't waste the paper. Story 14. I should have. I stayed there out of morbid curiosity to see how low they would go. But I'd made the decision I wasn't going to work there early in the process. I'm glad I stayed. The last thing that happened in the interview was the CEO personally asking us all to promise that if we ever make a mistake, the company will calculate how much that mistake cost us, and we will voluntarily pay the company that amount. Story 15. I applied for a register position at Pizza Hut. I specifically told them during my 2 interviews that I cannot be a delivery driver due to my car being unreliable. They even acknowledged that and told me, okay, got the job, came in for training on the first day. The very first thing they do is sit me down in a chair and started up a training video on delivery driving. I asked them if I could skip it since I'm only working the register slot in the kitchen. And the manager tells me that every position is a delivery driver, walked outright. Then and there and got paid for 1 hour of training. Story 16. They spelled my name wrong on their internal documents, all the while emphasizing how important attention to detail was. On top of that, they kept asking the same exact question about 12 different ways, which the answer to it was clearly listed in my work experience on my resume. This was for a thermal engineering position. They offered a tour of the facility while the person I was to work under finished up a meeting. I declined and left. Story 17 happened fairly recently. Made it to the 3rd interview for a large company. The first 2, they told me what my role would be, base pay plus commission, told me they were so excited to have me on board because of my experience. So I sit down for the 3rd interview. They again go over my role, my pay, etc. They say they're prepared to offer me that job right now and had the paperwork ready since this morning. But then they say, but we already hired someone for that. So instead, what we'd like you to do is, and proceeded to tell me the pay was less than half what they were already offering me prior for a lot more work. Basically, I went from being offered a management job to just being asked to train all the new employees they just hired, then stepped down to cashier for $10 per hour and no guaranteed hours. I stood up and told them I was worried I was wasting their time prior to this interview because I wasn't entirely sold on the job yet. But after today, it's become pretty apparent you guys were the ones wasting my time instead. No, thank you. And I left. About an hour later, I got a phone call asking for a 4th interview. They called almost every day for 2 weeks asking me to come back and talk to the owner. Story 18. I had been told it was a marketing job. The first interview was about marketing and took place in an office. I got a call back and was very happy as it meant I'd be able to get out of a call center and do something I liked. I took my last day off. I was allowed to go to the next interview. And when I got there, they said they wanted me to go to the local Home Depot with them. I got there and found out it was an MLM. I was so stunned that I let them take me out of the floor and show off the aggressive sales technique they wanted me to use on random customers. I walked out crying because now I had no days off to interview. And I was ashamed to have been tricked by the first interview. Story 19. Not quite an interview, but when I finished university, I didn't have a sensible job to go to immediately. I went to a job agency and said I was looking for a temporary job for experience working in my chosen field at an I didn't mind exactly what it was or really how much it paid. We talked about my existing qualifications and experience. At the end of the interview, they said they had the perfect job for me. Someone will pick me up the following morning. I said that I could drive, but no, they would pick me up. Fine. As I said, didn't really care where it was or exactly what I was doing as long as it met my admittedly vague requests, and they assured me that it was. The following day, a minibus came to get me. So where did they take me to work? A salad packing factory, to spend the day literally packing salad. I was getting paid, so what did it matter for one day? The worst was finding out over lunch was that if I had literally just turned up at the factory, they would have probably given me work. That is what happened for most of the staff there, who were largely seasonal workers from Eastern Europe. And those folk were also paid more than me. Not because I was new, but anybody who just turned up would likely get work and get paid more than I was. Obviously, they took us there by minibus, so we wouldn't just leave once we'd been tricked into going. So I did exactly that. Finished my lunch and then walked home. Story 20. Third and final interview, all same day, at a tech company. First two went well, and I was told this last one just was a formality. They wanted me to join. Interview with the head of the office guy seemed to start well. We walked to the cafeteria, grabbed a couple coffees, and with some small talk, we learned we knew some of the same people. We get back to his office and sit down. He looks at my file. It says here, "You're looking for certain salary." I said yes and explained, "It's really close to market for someone with my skills and experience." He looks at me and says, "I don't think you're worth it." I said, "Excuse me?" He repeated it. I laughed, grabbed my bag, stood up, thanked him for his time, and walked out. The company went out of business like a year later, so I feel dodged a bullet there. Story 21. Once interviewed, I was with the company Innova here in Chicago for an engineering manager role. First part of the interview went well. Then I met with a senior manager there, and he talked about the kind of crap they did. After a short time, it clicked with me. These mother duckers are loan sharks. I thanked him for his time and told him that I wasn't interested in ducking over poor people, got up and walked out the door. No thanks. I'm not going to help payday lenders get more customers. Story 22. Interviewer. What would you do if an employee of 15 years asked for a raise? Me. I'd remind him that he already gets a yearly raise. Interviewer. I don't give out raises. Story 23. I walked out of a second interview. The promised, advertised wage had been changed due to a recent budget change, was substantially lower than what was promised on the ad and in my first interview. It was for an assistant manager's role, pre-COVID, at a cinema. I thanked them for wasting my time and walked out and got a Five Guys. Story 24. Showed up, and the woman at the front desk greeted me while I waited for the interview. I introduced myself and handed her my resume, waited. Once I got into the actual interview, I saw that she had taped a bright pink note to my resume that read, "Has the personality of a rock." How she determined that from our brief introductory exchange was beyond me at the time. The interviewer saw my facial expression when I saw the note. I thanked him for his time and left. I later found out, a couple of years later, when I worked with a former employee of that firm, that the woman at the front desk was the boss's wife. She had made it known that she didn't want young or thin or single women working in the office. This happened close to 30 years ago when I was starting out in my career. I assume the boss and his wife are deceased or at least retired by now. Firms still exist, but clearly policies have changed as their staff is quite diverse, including several younger women. Story 25. I moved to a new city and tried finding a job in my preferred area. I went to an interview where I sat down with two well-polished ladies who were the company owners. One of the women said, "Glad you could make it. Now, before we really begin, I see where you were being paid X amount per hour at your last job. I'm sorry, we can't afford to pay you that much." I immediately smiled, stood right back up and said, "Thank you for not further wasting my time." The shocked look on both their faces was priceless as I skedaddled on out of there. They were probably expecting negotiations, but honestly, any person who opens an interview with that kind of statement deserves a walkout. Story 26. Worked as a permanent software developer for 6 years after university before deciding to quit to do contract work instead for better pay and flexibility. I put myself out there and found a 3-month contract role and was due to start in a week's time. Happy days. In the meantime, I got approached by a recruiter offering me an interview for a permanent role. So I said, "No thanks, I'm only interested in contract roles." And I've found one now anyway. So I'm off the market for the next 3 months. Recruiter came back to me and said the company were really interested in me and use contractors too, so would like to interview me anyway, as they might be able to offer me contract work in 3 months' time when I was back on the market. So the next day I get dressed up all smart, drive an hour through traffic to go to the interview at their office, which turned out to be in a crap hole location. First question, what's your availability like if you were offered this role? I'm starting a 3-month contract next week. Why have you come to interview for this permanent job then. I haven't. I said I didn't want it. And the recruiter told me to come anyway because you use contractors too and are interested in using me in future. No, that's not true. We've never used contractors. We're looking for someone permanent to start as soon as possible. Right, okay then, bye. The contract role I'd already secured paid almost as much in 3 months as this job did in a year, but the recruiter thought if he could just trick me into going to the interview, that maybe I'd change my mind and take his crafty role instead. Story 27. It was a job below my current salary spectrum. I was kind of desperate. I had years of experience in that role. I attended many interviews in my life, so I thought I knew what to expect. I also knew the money they were offering at this one, which wasn't great. But hey, let's try. The interview was the most intense I have ever encountered. I didn't like the interrogation style of it and seriousness. Many tricky questions. 3 people asking me a variety of questions in turns, follow-up questions, especially for someone who knows the role after years of doing it. It seemed that I was applying for a CEO of all CEOs role. It was coming to 45 minutes when I just started laughing, shaking my head at the ridiculousness of this charade, and said, I am sorry, I can't do it. Got the job at my current salary rate soon after, elsewhere. I know it sounds like a cool story, but at that time, I was close to tears when I left their building. Close. For a moment, I felt so upset and hurt that this is my future. Beg for a lower paid job with more responsibilities. Even though I giggled and gave up the process, it was one of those surreal situations. Anyways, fortunately, because of said experience, I found something right for me soon afterwards. So, not too many tears after all. Story 28. Any job that says, you get what you put into it. You wouldn't want to limit yourself to just a 9 to 5, would you? Yes, I would. 40 HR workweek max, thanks. I want to do my job and get paid for my job. F off. Story 29. Years ago, I went to an interview and sat down with the man who was to interview me. Sat in silence while he read something on his computer for a few minutes, then waited for a minute or so while he looked over my resume. It was a small business. He is the same person who called me to set up the interview, and he'd had the resume for a few days. He finally looked up at me and said, well, I'm not sure why you applied for this job. You really don't have any of the skills or experience I'm looking for. He was just so arrogant, and I felt like he was trying to make a power move to make a lowball offer. I didn't apply to any job that I wasn't qualified for. I was just instantly pissed that he was playing games. I calmly said, then I'm not sure why you're wasting my time, and I stood and walked to the door. He said something like, oh no, let's talk. And I told him I wasn't interested in working for him. I had a job already, I just wasn't terribly happy with it. So I really didn't feel like putting up with his BS Story 30 just bizarre. It was also a mailroom manager position. A very high-level person was leading the interview. She'd flown in from HQ in another state to help out with staffing this location, which was new and not open yet. A couple of local people were also present. It was going very strangely. All the questions were incredibly easy. After not even 10 minutes, she said to me, frankly, I have to ask, why do you want this job? You're way too overqualified to be in this role. I paused. Then I said, you know, your questions have kind of made me wonder if we're discussing the same position. What job do you think I'm here about? She told me it was a job where I'd basically be a gopher, distributing mail and picking up food and acting as a courier. But mostly, I'd be waiting around and be available to do whatever task might be presented to me. It would also be lots of busy work an admin assistant might do. I pulled the job ad and my application for it up on my phone and showed her what I thought I was there for, mailroom manager. There was no such position. An error had been made. They had copied and pasted all the stuff from when a different location had opened and applied it to this location, overlooking that there was no need for a mailroom manager this time. The operation at this location was not large enough to warrant one, or to warrant even having a mailroom. That job wasn't supposed to have been posted. Nobody knew it had been, and nobody knew how I'd even made it to this point in the hiring process. I'm guessing a lot of it was automated and then finalized by someone out of the loop in another state. She was irritated. Not with me, of course. She apologized, took my information, and said she was impressed enough with me to find me something somewhere in the company, but didn't know what yet. I never did hear back from her, though. Story 31. The ad said it was a salary position, with benefits and holidays off. I showed up and it was percent on 100 commission with crappy benefits and insane hours. I was like, I don't think we should continue with the interview. Good day. Story 32. Interviewer wouldn't give me any hint as to what my salary would be, even after asking twice. So I got up, told her the interview from my side was over, and left her sitting in the conference room. Story 33. The guy interviewing me interrupted the interview to scream at one of his employees, like red in the face, screaming and berating the guy, and then tried to just pick up where we left off like it was nothing. No thank you. Story 34. Told the hiring manager I would like to give more than just 2 weeks at my current job as a courtesy. He raised his voice and said, everyone is replaceable, and they'll find that out. Yeah, that seems like a good mentality for your boss to have. And later, Tater Story 35 was looking for a job and was in an interview for a clothing store CSR. Once they started talking about meeting sales goals, I told her politely that I didn't think it was a good fit and left. It was never mentioned in the ad or anything. I will never do sale goals bullcrap again. That's all. It is pretty demoralizing when you can't hit your goals, and then because of that, you must listen to managers say, "Don't take no for a reason," or "Get 3 no's before accepting." No means no, dude. It's gross and I'll never do it again. Story 36. Interview for a computer programming job, and we get to the point where we're talking about money. They tell me a yearly salary, I do the head math, and it's a reasonable hourly wage. Immediately followed by them, "You'll be working 60, 80 hours per week." Me. "Will everything over 40 hours in a week be paid overtime?" Them. Incredulous chuckling. Story 37. Showed up for a construction trades workers hiring event. I'm a plumber by trade and work was bleak as hell in my city at the time, so I went. Crap looked legit until they sat us down to speak about the work scope. They claimed to be one of the companies that were building Rogers Place in Edmonton. After they gave us sketchy details, they said, "However, if you don't want to do that, you can," and started speaking about how to do door-to-door sales of mostly chocolate in the higher-end communities around the city. They talked construction for maybe 15 minutes, and the rest was door-to-door chocolate sales and UNICEF fundraising, and how we can have an income of $150K plus a year. Doing that, I left probably 20 minutes into that. I had a friend who champed it out and stayed the entire time. The stories he told me were hilarious. Ironically, 30 minutes after I left, I got a call from a company who was actually a contractor on the Rogers Place job and ended up working for them for 4+ years. Story 38. Walked out of the third interview after they offered me a sales job that paid less with fewer benefits, after I was clear about my wage expectations. I thanked them for wasting both of our time. Story 39. At the end of the interview, I asked, "How many staff have worked here over a year?" The 3 interviewers awkwardly looked at each other and confessed they're all new and basically the office is rotating chairs because of toxic micromanagement. Yeah, why would I want to work there? Also, they said they wanted to offer me the job because I was the only male applicant and they don't have any men working in their department of 30 people. 2 red flags. I'm out. Story 40. I was interviewing as a preschool daycare teacher. When I arrived, I walked down a dark stairway and found 2 plastic chairs in a hallway. There was no door between my car and the chairs. I was kind of still outside. One of the chairs had a clipboard on it with the same blank application I had filled out online. I figured that was for me and started filling it out again. I hadn't seen anyone or been greeted, and it was eerily quiet. While I was filling it out, a room teacher, early 20s, walked out of a room with a long line of 5-year-olds holding hands. The teacher didn't make eye contact with me, but every single one of the kids did. I smiled, but they didn't. No one said a word. Do you know how difficult it is to get a group of happy 5-year-olds to be silent? At that point, I realized that an adult, me, was on the premises and no one seemed to know or care. That's a bit of a safety issue at a school daycare. It had only been about 15 minutes, so I just kept observing and filling out the redundant application. That's when I heard the lady who I assume was the director ask to have someone put on the phone. From behind her closed door, I could hear her start scream at this person things like, "You can't quit. You know you need the money. It's better than nothing, innit? Who else am I supposed to get?" When I say screaming, I mean full-on sweaty Chris Farley loud. She was also berating this person in between, trying to convince her to keep working there. The whole half of the conversation was just beyond unprofessional and desperate and bizarre. At that point, I realized that whatever was going on at this place, I didn't want to get involved. Since no one had acknowledged me yet, I set the clipboard quietly down on the chair and started back up the stairs. Then, I realized that my name contact info was on the paper, so I grabbed it and took it with me. From my car, I couldn't see the teacher who'd walked up the same stairs a few minutes before me, and I couldn't see or hear any kids at all. I kinda wish I knew if whoever was supposed to interview me ever tried to. The teacher had to have at least seen me sitting in the hallway when she walked past, and the paper application that was on the clipboard would have been missing. No one tried to reschedule with me though, so maybe the director lady was convincing over the phone. Or maybe the whole thing was a fever dream. I'd K, but I'm glad I had the sense and the confidence to nope out of there. Story 41. Back in the day, I was looking for a part-time job as a dog walker, as I like both walking and dogs, and also money. Showed up for the interview and asked if I could learn a little more about the company. The owner then went on a 5-minute tirade about how they were a reactionary, holistic rebellion against big dog food and the predatory animal medical industry, and how they advised all of their clients to buy and have their dogs eat their house-made raw dog meals and rely purely on holistic medicine and natural herbal treatments. My partner's a veterinarian. I thanked them for their time, told them that I didn't look like it would be a good match, and left. Story 42. Years ago, my friend got tricked into taking an account manager role that ended up being a door-to-door vacuum sales 100% commission gig. They screwed him over many times in the first 3 weeks, and he ended up giving them back their demo unit and quitting. It really was a good vacuum, very expensive. I applied and went through their whole spiel. They had some leads for me to go and high-pressure sell to people. I didn't go to any of them. They never set up payroll, and as they said, they would cut me a commission check. I gave them a fake name and number, just never contacted them again and kept the vacuum. Had it for probs 25 years. Story 43. First was a mall kiosk job selling phones. The interviewer was brand new, and you didn't start earning commission until you had made X number of sales. And I had recently been fired for not making sales. Second was some sort of call center job. I had done one before, and the job posting was an analyst position. I had the listed experience, applied, got called in for an interview, and quickly found out it was for a regular call center position. When I asked, the interviewer said, "Do you want the job or not?" I replied that I'd been lied to in our very first interaction and left. The third was for a manager position at a big box store. I got a call back sometime after applying but needed the job. After driving across town to the interviewer opened with it not actually being the manager job, but he always needed cashiers. Story 44. I didn't walk out, but they admitted the wages promised wouldn't be delivered, but could be after a year. Yeah, nope. And I had told them before what my compensation expectations were, and they still wasted both of our times having me arrive for an interview. They tried to play it off like, we offer a monthly free lunches, free parking, and free bike parking. Yeah, well, I can bring my own lunch and take the bus into work. Story 45. We are a conservative company with strong Christian values. We have mandatory prayer sessions before work and ask employees to dedicate a few hours out of their week to do something for their church. We also require all of our employees to be clean-shaven with hair above the collar and no piercings. Where are you going? This is definitely not the type of place I want to work for. You've had me in here for 15 minutes and haven't asked me anything about my job position, my expectations, or even offered to look at my portfolio. I'm mighty proud of my appearance and will not change it for you. At this point, I don't care how much you would be willing to give me to work for you, but no amount of money would get me to step foot in here as an employee or customer. If I wanted to go to church, I'll go on Sundays. Plus, this is an imprint company. If you want to act like a church, then open one. Story 46. I was 27 or something and needed a temporary job, so I went to interview for a marketing position. The boss was a kid at barely 20, offered crap salary and benefits, so I simply said he couldn't afford my time and left. A month later, they call and ask what it would take for me to accept the position since they hadn't found anyone. Told them my price. They refused. 2 weeks later, they called again to say they would hire me on my terms. $50K, 6-day workdays, no weekends, and a car leased on the company. Story 47. I was 19 and pretty crafty. I thought it would be cool to work at a store that fit my interests. So, Joanne Fabric, here I come. I get to the interview and something seemed off. I show up dressed nice for an interview and just got the stink eye from the manager. I am led back to the office. All the while, the manager is trying to get me to tell her something. I didn't catch on until later in the interview. It was going well, and she seemed like she liked me and my experience. That is, until the little hints didn't work. She straight up asked me if I was gay and if my partner knew I was here. I am a straight man. I was in shock until I realized she was being serious and I wasn't getting further in the interview if I didn't tell her I was gay. Flabbergasted, I got up, told her I thought her preconceptions were going to hurt her, and left. It was the weirdest thing I've experienced in an interview. After talking to others that worked there, the guys straight up lied to get the job. She only hired gay guys because straight guys wouldn't know anything about crafts and were only trying to hook up. Story 48. The interviewer was clarifying some details and asked me if it was Miss or Mrs. I gave him a pass and said Miss, but he doubled down and said yes, but are you married or not? So I told him it didn't have any bearing on my capacity to do the job, but that I was going to stop the interview there as I didn't want to work for someone who thought it did, and then I left. Story 49. Dental assistant job. The doctor conducting my interview kept talking and talking without giving me a chance to get a word in, and every sentence out of her mouth made the true state of the job worse. This is all stuff she admitted. She signed up with dental assistant schools to get externs, unpaid interns, specifically because she wanted free labor. She hired on a couple of them. But when they found better jobs, she coerced them into staying on longer. Despite advertising a full-time position, which is 32 hours plus in dentistry, she said this was 3 days a week with odd hours. Like some weeks are 2 days a week, some days they open at 10. Some days she will just leave early to do whatever with her 4 kids, and I would be expected to go home. It may become full-time if I prove myself to her. Once it was clear she wasn't going to give me a chance to say anything, I just interrupted her, thanked her for her time, said I needed a full-time position, and walked out. This lady followed me. She followed me out of her office, through her dental practice, and to the door. She was basically begging me to reconsider, saying it will become full-time. Crazy. I noped out. Story 50. A company once told me that acting with a fiduciary responsibility would likely hinder my growth in the company. LPT. When looking for a financial advisor, always go for a fiduciary. We are legally required to act within your best interest. Story 50. The guy was just really rude. It was a waste of both of our time. I got a call back from the recruitment company, and apparently he wanted me to come back for another interview. Turned it down right away. I'm not about mind games. Story 52. I interviewed for a typical ET admin job. The job posting said, bachelor's degree or equivalent experience. I applied because I had 12 years of experience working on their specified infrastructure. Interviewer, who would also be my manager, asked where I got my degree. I replied starting that I went to school for a few years, computer science, but never finished because I was already working in the field and had real life to deal with. I intended to finish, but it wasn't currently in the cards. I always insist that anyone I hire has a degree. I know everything I need to know about your management style. I'd like to remove myself from consideration for this position. Thank you for your time. There was no need to be rude. Besides, you never know what kind of damage you can do to your reputation. I went back to the contact house and asked why they submitted me for a job if the boss required a degree. It was a waste of time for everyone involved. Story 53. I once traveled about 30 minutes to a job interview for a sales/account manager position. It turned out to be for Herbalife, some MLM scheme. Nowhere in the ad was Herbalife mentioned, and the entire ad was made to appear as if it was a paid position, rather than me having to spend money. I noped the hell out of there. Story 54. They didn't advertise the salary. I don't normally apply to those postings, but this one looked decent, and I liked the company. One of their first questions was my salary expectations. Turns out I was expecting double what they wanted to offer. It was amicable enough for a walkout, but we shook hands and agreed there was no point in continuing. Lesson learned on applying for jobs that don't post compensation. Story 55. I'm a veteran and had an interview with another veteran from different branch of service. He would ask me a question about my time in service and one up every answer I gave him, and would then make a crack about my service branch. I'm used to a little back and forth, but it's all this guy wanted to do. When he said he had some paperwork he wanted me to fill out for HR, I said that I needed to get some documents from my car and then just left. If that's how he was acting during the interview, then my life would have been hell working for him. Story 56. The interviewer did not want to tell me the salary unless I promised to do lots of overtime. I did not want to commit to do overtime without knowing how much the job was paid. It was a dead end, and he looked like a crappy boss anyway. Story 57. Years ago, at the end of my MSc, I interviewed for a position at the largest oil and gas company headquartered in Spain. At some point, the interviewers gave me pen and paper. When I was told this was for graphological analysis, I told them I declined to take the test as I was against graphology because it is pseudoscience. Once they made it clear that there were no exemptions, I stood up and left. I had no interest in working for an engineering company that uses pseudoscience in their recruitment. Story 58 was desperately seeking employment after C-19 destroyed the hospitality industry, drove 30 minutes to a Best Western hiring for nights, which I've been on for years and have more than plenty experience. He told me my starting wages would only be $10 an hour, then it went on to tell me about all the hotels he owned in the area, under his family members' names, because you cannot franchise that many hotels that close together. It was about the time he was telling me about the new hotel he was building in Knoxville, that I finally looked at him and said, "So you've got the money to build a brand new hotel from the ground up, but not to pay your employees a living wage? I think we're done here." Story 59. Not so much a walkout, but we both knew that it was over. Interview with Radio Shack around 1990. I was a home stereo geek and was looking for the next college job. Interview with a regional manager for a slot in one of his stores. Interview goes well, and he asks if I have any questions. I ask about compensation. He explained that there was a base rate, close to minimum wage, but salespeople were expected to exceed that with their commissions on sales made. He went on to tell me that the vacant position was due to someone that couldn't do this on a consistent basis. How do you feel about that? Well, I can't say that I'm confident enough about your product line for that to make me very happy. Yeah, it was over at that point. Story 60. Already had doubts after doing a walk through the office to the interview. Lousy facilities and burnt, damaged-looking workers. Manager does a cursory interview, then tells me I don't have enough experience in a language that wasn't even listed in the ad. I smelled a lowball offer scam and noped out before the interview was even finished. Story 61. I used to work at one of the corporate Bank of America offices in business operations, left for another job, and wasn't happy there. So I wanted to come back to BOA. Got the interview, went in, and there was the hiring manager and one of her colleagues' peers manager. "So, tell me about yourself." Me. I most recently worked at blank doing XYZ, etc., etc., etc. And before that, I actually worked here. You know that office as you round the security desk? That was my office. I did XYZ. This was who I worked with. Before that, I worked in this other depth at BOA before I got promoted. Manager. Hold on. Why isn't that on your resume, Mia? My resume is already 2 pages, and I only listed my last position as that's the title I had when I left. Cue to her staring to argue with me about concealing my job history, and me arguing back with her about how resumes are written. I put all 3 positions I had held previously when I applied, and it went on for 10 minutes. After her colleague finally interrupted us and calmed her down and agreed that I was right, I got up and said, "I'm not interested in working for you, nor do I want this job. If this is how you are in an interview, I can't imagine reporting to you and how miserable I'd be every day I worked here." She started to try to say something, and I cut her off to say, "I'm done here, bye." Story 62. I had a job I hated after we were bought by a huge corporate entity and interviewed with this guy from a pretty well-known tech company. The interview was a lunch interview in their campus cafeteria, which I thought was awkward enough. About 15 minutes into the interview, he starts telling me about being on call basically 7/24 and the high-pressure environment of supporting their customers. And I just told him to stop. I was not interested in being on call 7/24 for the salary they were offering. And so there we are. Having lunch. Story 63. Showed up early, was led into a waiting room. The only other door in there led into the manager's office, and there was a large window, so he knew I was there. Waited a bit. Another person was let in to wait with me. After about 30 minutes of watching the manager doing not much or anything, aside from ignoring us, I got up, wished the other person good luck, and left. It was a crap department store job, and considering they didn't value my time before I was even interviewed, I had zero interest in working there. Story 64. Went on a job interview for a management position with a rather vague job description. Got there and was taken to a room with about 20 other people, a small stage in front with a closed curtain. After a lengthy introduction about this great career opportunity, they opened the curtain to reveal a vacuum cleaner. It was an interview to be a door-to-door vacuum salesperson, 100 commission-based salary. As soon as they opened the curtain, I walked out. Story 65. I have one. A while back, at a time when jobs were somewhat tougher to get, I landed an interview for a pretty decent job. I'm not usually all that great during interviews, who is? But the first interview went great, couldn't have gone better. I really hit it off with the guy, and as it was wrapping up, I thought I had it in the bag. Then he asked me to come in at 6 o'clock the following morning to meet with the guy you'll be training with if you get the job so he can show you around. I had no problem with that. So I said, okay, fine. I show up at 6 on Friday morning, go inside and ask for the guy. He comes over, looks at me and says, "That's what you're wearing? You got work gloves?" I said, maybe in my car, but I don't typically bring work gloves to job interviews. He proceeds to start barking out orders like, get this, get that, carry this, put this over there, and etc. I'm confused, but okay, whatever. Then he leads me over to his work van. We get in and he starts driving his daily route. I'm thinking, okay, he's just showing me what a typical stop on a route is like. So I'm sitting there paying attention. He's continuing to bark out orders and getting exasperated like I'm slowing him down. Then we go to another stop, then another. Then he says, "We gotta pick up the pace here. I wanna get done by 3 because I'm going skiing this weekend." So I say, whoa, you do realize that do not officially work here yet, right? He gives me this look, then says, this is like their audition and they do it all the time. So I reply, I'm sorry, but I don't work for free. You were supposed to show me around and you did that. I haven't signed anything. No one knows I'm even here. I have no recourse in the event of a mishap and I'm not on the clock. So let's wrap this up. Bring me back to my car now. He was fuming and saying, guess you don't want the job that bad and etc. and complaining about how his Friday was ruined now. I was even more angry though about the scam they were running there. I went home and ratted them out to the State Department of Labor, story 66. I applied for a management job that should have paid $75,000 plus per year with a multinational Swiss firm, and all the way through the interview, they brought up the topic of remuneration. They were offering a little more than half of that pay. I politely explained the average income in Canada is about $54,000 per year, thanked them for their time, and excused myself from the rest of the interview. Story 67. I interviewed once at an army organization very interested in salvation, if you know what I mean. First warning flag was when the receptionist told me to make sure I addressed the interviewer as captain or sir. Any other form of address would immediately terminate the interview. After cooling my heels for 45 minutes, I'm ushered into a conference room where I'm introduced to the captain and the IT head, and I'm told they will take turns asking me questions. It went something like this. Very basic technical question. CPT illegal religious question. It's some very basic technical question. CPT illegal personal question. It's slightly less basic technical question. CPT illegal marital question. It's a decent technical question. CPT illegal question, followed by a minute rant before I could deflect. I finally expressed that I was uncomfortable with the questions and considered the interview over. At which point, the captain became belligerent and demanded to know why I was afraid to answer. My answer, which I had been crafting since the first question, is one I have treasured and wish I could be so eloquent at other times, was this. Your failure to abide by the law has made me question what other illegal activities you might let slide, and I cannot, in good conscience, continue this interview. I turned and left with the captain red-faced, screaming spittle drops and insults at me all the way to the door. I'll add their tech person spent the entire interview staring fixedly at her question list on the table and avoiding movement that would draw his attention. Reflecting on it, all the folks I observed in that office had a very whipped dog body language, as if they were expecting abuse at any second. It really soured me to their organization, frankly. Story 68. I'm in my 30s, but look in my 20s. I applied at a music store. The place was an independently owned place in Mignolani, run by some eccentric old guy. He didn't believe I was even in my 20s. He thought I was a teenager lying about my age and demanded to call my parents in high school to get their permission. So out the door I was. Story 69. Many years ago, in the early 1960s, I had just concluded meeting with an HR staff member, then overheard him say to the others that we just got our token minority employee. I decided not to be anybody's token employee, so got up and left. Story 70. The job listing said it was work for a charity, which seemed nice at the time. Why work for minimum wage stocking shelves when you can work for minimum wage doing some good in the world? Turns out it was fundraising for several charities. You got paid minimum wage, but were paid commission for every sucker you managed to swindle into donating. If the donation was big enough, it meant that less than half of the money would be going to the charity. Story 71. Showed up, building wasn't one they owned or even leased long-term. Signs on the front door, on cardboard, directing people to another empty building with a for lease sign on it. Entry room was empty except for a little hostess stand. Girl behind it was wearing a name tag from a third different company and asked if I was here for the group interview for marketing agent for X company, a fourth different company name. No, I was there to interview for a significantly different position at a different company. Oh yeah, that's the same thing. Pro tip, marketing agent and director of business operations are not the same thing. Later found out they were one of 6 companies owned by the same guy who used the exact same cut and paste job descriptions for almost everything. This one was the only one that had a website and social media presence, and seemed legit right up to that point. Story 72. Midway through the interview, I realized that I had zero chance of getting hired because I greatly misunderstood what the job would entail. I feel like I handled it professionally by stating I think there was a misunderstanding on my part. I did not realize what the job entailed, and I am not a proper fit for this position. The interviewer was understanding and actually appreciated, or at least she said she did, that I was honest. Story 73. I needed a job that wasn't too much for me physically, but paid over minimum wage. I walked in for my interview 5 minutes early and waited at the front stand. Several workers made eye contact and ignored me. I waited there for 30 minutes before finally someone came to the front to see what I was there for. I was seated and told the manager would be with me shortly. I waited another 30 minutes before the assistant came out and informed me that the position they posted on Indeed and had called me in to interview for actually didn't exist. She said that if I was interested in any of the other positions she'd listed off, she could get the manager and have her interview me for those positions. I left. I wasn't going to waste more of my time for a company that lies and makes you wait a ridiculous amount of time. Had I been a customer, I wouldn't left after 10 minutes of not being seated or talked to, but I was stubborn. Story 74. They wanted someone to manage sales, ordering, and scheduling for a print shop. I could do all those things. They made me an offer, 25 months over minimum wage. I yelled, I put on nice clothes for this? As I walked out. Story 75. It was a group interview. Pretty much whoever talks the most and loudest gets the job. I walked in the door, looked around for a second, and told them I was in the wrong room and left. Story 76. Didn't walk out, but I should have. The hiring manager demoted the position within 15 minutes of my first interview. I was scheduled to be there for 5-6 hours. She thought she had told me that I didn't have enough experience. I ended up trolling the rest of the team and interviewers for the remainder of the day. I did test all of them, asked the same questions to see if there was communication across the team and company. There wasn't. Considering my A-plus whole demeanor for the day, I thought there was no way they'd offer me the position. They did. Story 77. A friend of mine runs a small company and he asked if I was interested in a position basically doing exactly what I was doing freelance, only doing 2 for his company instead. I spoke with him and a couple of his senior advisors and let them know I'd be interested, so we set up an interview with the person that would be leading the program I would fall under. As soon as I sat down, she started lecturing me about how her team did not need my expertise and that she was not interested in why her boss wanted me to help her team. I didn't say a word. I just got up and left. I got a call from my friend, and he said he was shocked at the feedback he got from his employee, that she said she had never met a more disrespectful person. He and I have known each other for years, so I asked him, "Have you ever known me to act like that? Ever?" I told him that I'd solved the problem for why his team was underperforming, and our next dinner was on him. Story 78. I got to the interview, and there is a bunch of Dianetics, Scientology, mantra lying around, posters on the wall, etc. I asked about it, and they said their program was based off of Dianetics. They were Scientologists. I said, "You don't actually believe that crap, do you?" And walked out. Story 79. Not my own story, but something I saw/overheard at a coffee shop 2 tables over. A catty and crusty woman of a particular age, I'm over 50 myself, I'm allowed to say it, was interviewing a very pleasant, polite, lovely young lady for a home healthcare position. Crusty old biddy said something about how they ride share 2 to a car to various client homes. Would the interviewee have a problem with someone smoking in her car? Her answer was yes. She would prefer they not do that. The dried up piece of beef giddy goes on. Okay, if they use the other person's car, would she have a problem with them smoking? Pleasant young lady's answer was yes. She would still prefer to not be around someone smoking. Nasty old hag said, all uppity and rude, like she honestly couldn't understand the issue. But it's their car. The younger woman, very polite, smiled and said, "But it's my lungs." Somehow around my laughter, I saw that she then gathered up her papers, thanked the drippy old bag for her time, and said she wouldn't be interested and left. Never work for a home healthcare agency that employs people too stupid to realize that some people don't want to be around cigarette smoke, no matter who's driving. Story 80. I interviewed for a mid-senior role at a major tech company you all know. I had a feeling the company culture was bad when I asked the panel when their last PTO was, and everyone said 2-3 years prior. But in my final interview with the CFO, we'd talked about a system implementation, and the CFO was adamant he wanted to go from buying everything for the company on credit card to a full ERP RFP and roll out in 4 months. I told him that would be impossible, and he said, "I don't like my reports to tell me no. I want them to tell me how they're going to make it happen." The job would have been 33% more than I was already making, but it would have never worked, reporting to him. Story 81. Agent got me an interview at what he described as a gaming company. Technically, he was correct, but it was an online slot machine dev, and worse, they didn't have the proper licenses when I asked them about it. Story 82. Over the phone interview 2 years back. I was a trucker and applied for a company. They set up a phone interview, not due to COVID. Very common as the company is always based in another state. And they said it was a low pad, like Swift Low, 35 cents a mile, while I was already getting 40 per mile. I said I won't leave for anything less than new, and he just laughed, saying that I was luck. He is offering while that most are making 27. I hung up. Still get a call every once in a while. Story 83. Found myself unemployed due to previous company going bankrupt. Applied for a job that I wasn't 100% confident in my prior experience, but I knew the new company was good and thought if they didn't think I had the experience, they wouldn't ask me for an interview. They excitedly asked me for an interview. It was a small industry and my reputation preceded me. And I thought any experience I lacked, I could catch up during training, etc. Went to the interview and the guy looks at my resume, presumably for the first time, and realizes I lack the experience needed. He goes on for half an hour saying, "So you don't have this experience? Why did you apply? How did you find this job listing?" Or, "I just can't justify hiring you without the necessary experience." It was a waste of my time. I knew I might not be suitable, but I had at least thought they would have screened my resume prior to asking me for an interview if it was a deal breaker. I had to end the interview and basically stood up and said, "Thanks, keep mine in mind if anything else comes up." Story 84. I didn't walk out, but I unintentionally influenced someone to flee. My ex-boss used to offer an employment test to everyone who interviewed for office work as the first step. The content was garbage about hopes and dreams as written in the 70s, but boss took it to be an aptitude test or even an IQ test. Nobody could interview without first taking the test. It was a dystopian place to work and the environment was depressing. Just files and desks, but places to hide. I was snoozing under my desk when some poor soul came in and started filling out the test to apply to be our 8th replacement admin in 4 years or something. The thing was, I couldn't inconspicuously rouse myself without being seen by her. So I lay low for about 10 minutes before saying, "Screw it," then eased myself up from under my desk and said hello. She put down her pencil, looked back at me, and left. Story 85. Me, 25-hour per week order processing, inventory, etc. Boss. Vice president company was reorganizing. Boss was being promoted, relocated to HQ out of state, while my job was being assimilated by full-time staff at HQ. Boss and I were friendly. Oh, he knew I only needed a second income for husband and I. Husband had good career in that location when we had family, etc. I wasn't going out of state, and certainly not for full-time work I didn't need. At an interview, explained why I was searching. An interviewer asked if they offered for me to relocate out of state. Told him everything above. He pushed. But did they offer for you to relocate with them? Repeated, politely and professionally. All the reasons it wasn't brought up by me or them. Mofo pushed again. But they relocated boss and chose not to offer the same to you? Got up, thanked him for his time, and walked out. I had no need to work for someone who just looks for reasons to be argumentative and dismissive. Story 86. I did not quite walk out, but told them I did not have the skills they wanted, which sealed the deal. This was right after college. I was applying for a job as assistant buyer for a large retail corporation. I was very eager to get the job. After 2 or 3 rounds of interviews, I finally interviewed with 2 buyers, who would have been my managers, who I liked a lot. They seemed to like me too, but they must have picked other people because I was invited again to interview yet another buyer. She came into the room, did not look at me, did not shake my hand, sat to the side of the table, even though there was a seat right in front of me, and started asking me questions with super sulky and disinterested tone. At that point, I realized I would have hated to work for her and told her I did not have the skills she was looking for. I originally thought it was stupid because it closed my doors to other opportunities at the company, but in retrospect, I think it was a very smart decision. Story 87. Showed up for an intern position. Waited 15 minutes past the time accorded. Was greeted, went to a bench at the back of the place. The guy told me, sorry, but he has to see something inside about a meeting. Waited 15 more minutes. Decided to leave. Not going to work in a place where they can sort out simple operations such as interviews for internships.